Steadily it rises.
Now, I hope all is well out there. I've been super busy, so I haven't been able to do as many of these listing reviews as I had hoped, but I am going to sit down today and go through this 67 Lincoln Continental Convertible. Now, the caveat is it did sell yesterday, one day before the time of this recording on 3/4. And one of the important things I think to go through it, even though, typically I'll do a follow-up video on a sale just to recap it, but this one's definitely, I think, something that we need to go through in detail because look at the price. 67 Lincoln Continental Convertible, $127,000. This is, for the most part, a stock car. Yes, you will see it has the wider whites. I know that is not everybody's favorite. Certainly, some of the purists will chime in, 50s into 61 was kind of the end of the white walls, but we'll talk more about that. But again, what we have continued to see are very, very strong prices on these convertibles and the sedans. Certainly 66, 67 convertibles. We've even seen, strong prices on the 68 sedans and so on. But what I want to do is go ahead and jump over to what I've prepared here so I can share my screen. So basically, this car sold on 3/4, as I mentioned. We know in 67, there's a total of 45,777 Lincolns produced for that model year. The convertibles at 2,276, that was the second lowest, only to, I think that was the lowest, if I remember correctly. Yeah, that was the lowest production year because they were basically kind of tapering out. And, the previous year for 66 convertibles, 3,180. And then, of course, the first year was 2,857. So when you look at a convertible 22, call it 2,300 that were produced, there's certainly not that many that exist because of fires, car crashes, bust, things like that. So, there may only be 1,000 of those left in existence. Now, I took this prior, so I apologize. I didn't grab a new screenshot. This was back from, I think, March. And you got to remember with Hagerty, they do have, their price valuation tool, and the number would be increased because of, this sale, of course. It is worth noting that if you Google this VIN number or you click on it, because remember, Bring a Trailer, they hyperlink to the VIN number, which I think does a Google search, it will land over here. And you could see this other car that I had reviewed sold for about $58,000, which is certainly a good comp, I think you could say. Maybe not as nice of a car overall, but it is worth noting that here on Hagerty, they showed the price at $133,350. I think they maybe bake in the buyer's fee, the fees, if you will, whereas we can look here and see. And that's important to just keep in mind, just because, remember, there are potential fees and things like that that are going to elevate the price, but it looks like for the Hagerty valuation tool, they do build that in automatically. But again, regardless, a very, very strong price. What we have here are the listing details. The big thing that we'll point out, it is a black Lincoln, super popular. I do like the color combo. I'm not a huge maroon fan, although I will say the interior on this one, I think, really goes nicely with that black paint. There is an articulating spotlight, which is bullet pointed here. That was not a factory thing. I have seen one other Lincoln that Chris at Lincoln Land owns. Friendly reminder, if you need parts for your Lincoln, certainly reach out to Lincoln Land in Clearwater, Florida. But the articulating spotlight, that could be a potential turnoff to some people, but it's, I think, correct, and one of those accessories that people wouldn't mind necessarily having. The rest of it's pretty standard, although it does have a CD changer. Those have kind of went more by the wayside, kind of a 90s, 2000 thing, certainly. But with the advent of Bluetooth and these different receivers, it's a nice thing to have, especially if you're nostalgic like I am. But that's one additional thing I wanted to mention. I think the Lincoln registry is still down. I didn't check today, but I know last time it was down. Here we could break down the VIN code. So at the top is the VIN from Bring a Trailer. We know that 7 represents the year, 86 four-door convertible. G is the Mel 462, which they use for the entire year of 67 into partway of 68 with the 462. We see the last digits, the last 5 of the VIN door plate code 23713, indicating it's the 23,713th built for that model year. Again, if you look at the total 45,777, give or take about a little, not quite, I guess a little more than halfway, but about halfway there in the production. This is something I had added. This is from the service manual type information, and it kind of just breaks down what I break down there. The 11 district sales office, which again, bring a trailer, typically will break this down, and they did on the listing. That was out of Massachusetts, if I remember correctly. But we can look here, the letter M. If we look at the little chart that I have, that represents December. Ironically, the other car I flashed a few moments ago, the maroon, it was built on December 23rd of 66. This one was finished on December 21st. So that 21 represents the day of the month. So it's the 23rd, 1,713 out of, again, the 45,777. So what I want to do is let's just briefly go through this listing, and we'll talk about some of the pluses that you just kind of saw there. The big thing is, to me, this is more of this is basically an original car. Now, sure, it has the spotlight, it has the wider whites, it has been repainted, which is specific to what's in the listing, right? But you look at the interior and you go, wow, it has that old school originality, that look and feel. I dig this any day over stuff that's redone, only because I love this era. I don't mind the creases and that kind of originality. I think that's a big thing. It has the AC, so air condition, compressor, receiver, dryer have been replaced, which is key. I tell folks all the time, you can upgrade that stuff. And that definitely saves you time and money over the course of time. We can also see here, and we'll see in other photos, this is where the little radio thing is controlled for the CD changer. Again, I think this is definitely cool. I have a CD changer in one of my old 1990 trucks, which I totally dig. But certainly, if you were looking to cruise this a lot, you may want to look at, updating that to something Bluetooth. That way you can just stream from your phone. But that's a very, very minor thing overall. The other big thing with this car is 57,000 miles. Apparently, that's original. And, you'll see these cars with 70, 80, 90,000 miles a lot, just because they weren't driven every day in many cases. But certainly, like less than 60,000, that's a big plus. We can see here the engine bay looks really immaculate. It does have the 3-port Carter fuel pump, which is key. It's got the blue air cleaner and the valve covers, which is specific to those particular years. It has the battery tray as well, which is great. A lot of times those are kind of rotted out or not there, and it has a very, very nice fan shroud. These are made more of a kind of a fiberglass type material, and they do tend to crack over time, and they can get kind of nasty, but that one's very nice. Of course, it has the 4-barrel with the 462. That's all pretty standard. A standard transmission. We've got the VIN broken down here. Yes, Boston, Massachusetts. Now, that would typically be a little bit of a concern if a car wasn't this nice. We're going to look at some undercarriage photos here in a few moments so we can see here a sneak peek. To me, the reason why this car commanded such a premium, awesome price are two things. One, it's a super nice car. Number two, we have this video. Now, I'm not going to play the entire video. I did watch it. And you can see here it's 31 minutes, okay? The owner of this car did a fantastic job of going around, showcasing it, showing the auto drops working, showing the dash. We can see in that shot I just had there, the dash, if I remember correctly, is not cracked, which they typically are in 67, which really kind of reinforces what a nice car that it is. This gentleman really showcases a lot, and that goes a long way because, what it is old saying, picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, video's worth even more, right? Because it shows the car driving, he talks about it, he shows everything that's working and things like that. And that's fantastic. Now, this car was acquired, if I remember correctly, in the last couple of years, and they decided to part with it. And that's listed in the listing. And then, of course, they do go underneath the car, which is fantastic. If we take a look at the photo gallery, of course, black, if you've never owned a black car, just know that you got to be a fan of detailing, or you got to have a good detail person, because black is not an easy car to maintain, especially if you're pretty OCD and you want it looking good. What I can tell you from these photos is, in my opinion, from the looks of it, this car looks very, very nice. and that is not what we always typically see of these cars. Another thing that I like is we can see this weather strip molding piece here, which steel rubber does sell. This is typically thrash, or there's typically little rips in it. This one looks very good. We can see, I love that they have the photos showing the tail lights on. Just to be clear, 66, 67, these are reflectors up here at the end of the peak moldings in those 2 years. Tons of photos. You can see it's a very nice place, a very nice home here. I think it was in Arizona, if I remember correctly. So, obviously their time of ownership is, it appears to be well kept. I've talked about this all the time. The pot metal on these cars can tend to look pretty tough or pretty bad. This one looks fantastic. Just to buy a grill, just to find one that's in this kind of condition in itself is not easy. We can see it does have all of the Continental letters. That's key because we have seen some that are missing, and those are kind of getting expensive. Another big plus, this appears to be an original. There is a guy that's making these 66 and up passenger mirrors. This has the option that was available. I've seen these mirrors sell for, $3,000 just by themselves. Very rare. I've seen some in person, but they're hard to find. And if somebody has one, they don't want to typically part with it. But that is a very, very, very cool thing. And it comes with this smaller peak molding strip here. You've got the mirror that bolts in, and then you have the other peak molding. So if you ever see that on 66, 67, 68, or 69, very, very rare. Again, there is somebody that's making them now, which is super cool. But there's nothing like the original ones, of course. When you're seeing the reflection of the trees and things like that, again, I always talk about if you can see these cars in person, that's the best thing. But certainly the presentation online with the photos and the videos is what is really going to help sell a car, or in this case, really drive the price to a price that if I had done this listing review prior, I certainly wouldn't have felt that it was going to hit 130 grand. I mean, that's just fantastic for the owner, and congratulations. We can see it looks like it has a radial tire that kind of looks like a bias ply. I know that there's companies that make them. It looks like a Coker tire, and it might list that in the listing, but I do love the look of those tires. I'm a fan of the radials. I know some people love the look of the bias plies, but it's cool if you can get one that looks like one, but it rides like a radial. I think that's fantastic. We just got a ton of photos. We could see the courtesy lights are working inside the door jambs when all of that was painted. That's kind of the difference between a paint job and what used to be referred to for many years as a respray. On these older cars, back in the day, they'd pull them in, maybe 1982, tape up the moldings, like in my 64, which was probably done in the 70s, tape it up, respray it, right? But a car like this, you can see that they didn't just come in here and blow in paint and cover every nut and bolt and things like that and screw, if you will. So I think, overall, the paint, I mean, if you had this car and needed a paint job, you'd be amazed. Check with your local body shop. A lot of times they're going to quote it, and then they're going to realize, wow, this thing has a lot of trim. Man, this has a lot of stuff to take apart. Easily 30 grand to get a car painted. You're talking black. It could even be more depending on where you live. Yes, I'm being totally serious. The paint and body guys out there definitely know what I'm talking about. We can see inside the trunk looks fantastic. I love when everything is intact. These plastic pieces I've talked about here in the trunk, they are getting harder to find when they are missing. Sometimes they're brittle and cracked. Everything is here. You have these, what I refer to as landing pads. When the top is retracted into the trunk area, you've got a black pad on each side. I believe both of them, yes, are there, which is great. It looks like at some point, maybe the lines were changed. It's kind of hard to tell because they were clear lines in these years. But regardless, everything looks good. You can see actually a crack here on this plastic piece. And just to find one of these without a crack is some decent money. But again, that's very minor. I don't think the average person's going to mind. You could probably even find someone to repair it to a certain extent with some different products. The CD changer is hidden behind what I refer to as the curtain, where, some of the things are hiding back there for these cars. So you can see that's kind of a cool spot. In 66 and up, of course, we have the fix, if you will, that John Cashman refers to. This bar has to be installed in 64, 65, but in 66 and 67 convertibles, this was something that automatically came from the dealer's Lincoln Mercury, if you will. You also have the different setup here. I haven't talked a lot about it, but you do have, this is factory with the pump here. We can see the jack is there. The relays, if I remember correctly, they were moved in 66 and 67. So that sometimes confuses me, but you guys will know that own those cars. One of my favorite things of these 66, 67s is you have the rear glass. It's not like a vinyl window, and that's just amazing engineering for the time. Again, if I look at the lines here, it does look like it's all been changed, which is great. That's a huge win because, that just a kit to change all the lines is, $2,000, let alone installation and bleeding the system and all of that. It's hard to tell. It looks like this is what we refer to as the hockey puck, and the upper back panel switch is basically in here. Then you've got your motor. There is an upgrade for these years because this flapper is a little bit heavier. So if you go to like the Brewers or the John Cashmans of the world, he has a whole setup that will replace this. It's a little bit stronger of a motor. If this isn't broke, certainly don't fix it, but you will sometimes see, and John will reinforce, that it is okay to, like let's say your top is retracting into the trunk and that flapper's having a little bit of a hard time. You can sometimes kind of put your finger there and kind of help it a little bit, and that's okay. But typically you won't have to do that if you end up having the upgrade. We can see the engine bay looks fantastic. 67, we do have a dual master cylinder from the factory, which is great. I mean, whoever detailed this or maintained the car did a fantastic job, and that is what helped drove the price so high. We can see here on the expansion tank, it has this little overflow deal that points straight down. Those are often cracked and not there. There's just some good photos of the engine bay, and I love seeing a complete engine bay. Oftentimes this piece of the air cleaner is just not there. People remove it just because it's maybe not necessarily needed, but when you have the choke working and all of that stuff on these cars and everything is there, it certainly reinforces that these cars do continue to go up in price. There's a lot of comments. I didn't go through all of them. There were some people kind of jabbering back and forth a little bit about the fact that they missed out on. And I think Bring a Trailer is really cool because it does auto refresh after someone bids. So it's a little unlike eBay, because eBay is like you go down to the wire. Well, Bring a Trailer resets, I think, to the 2-minute shot clock, if you will. This reinforces that these cars do continue to go up. Now, I understand when I post a car or I cover a car that goes for $600,000, I do understand that a lot of people go, wow, I should start building my Lincoln, right? And we see a lot go for $300,000 in that range, right? And $200,000. You got to look at it, right? If you wanted a custom Lincoln and you built one and you're going to enjoy it for years and then you sell it and you're able to make a profit or break even, fantastic. But there's a huge gamble in that. This person has an original car, which 15 or 20 years ago, you could have gotten way less than that, right? And this original car just being maintained went for, call it $130,000, which is fantastic. Again, for the seller, and it's great for the market overall, I think. It is tough, right? If you're out there and you're looking for a Lincoln and you're going, wow, I'm never going to be able to get one. Trust me, stick with it and you'll find one, whether it's a sedan or coupe, or in this case, a convertible. You'll get what you want, but it's just going to take some staying the course, I guess, and looking and finding and trying to find something within your budget. Oftentimes I feel that the original cars are going to continue to go up in worth because as more of these are customized, you're going to have less and less out there. Now, certainly, if somebody can sell a car for $600,000 and let's say they have $200,000 in it, I mean, yeah, who's going to complain about making $400,000? I'm not. But the majority of people out there aren't going to go and put $200,000 in a car and try to turn around, right? I don't know where the market's going to go for the future. I'll be curious to see if, younger kids and the younger generation are even into these older cars in 15 or 20 years. I think, and many of us have discussed it, the Entourage TV show on HBO repopularized, if you will, these cars because of the opening sequence and sometimes riding in that black 65. People were like, whoa, what's that boat? What's that big car? What's that four-door convertible? I want one. Of course, Lincoln Lawyer, a lot of TV shows and different films and stuff. But will the prestige continue? I certainly think that it will. But there's always a debate. Do I customize? If you have a car that, maybe you want $80,000 for, and you go do a Coyote swap, and now you can sell it for $200,000. Sure. I mean, most people aren't going to argue with that. But You got to remember, you have to have the money to be able to go and do it. You have to have somebody reputable that's going to be able to turn around. And who knows, these next few years, there could be enough Lincolns brought to market that maybe there's not any more buyers out there that are willing to spend that much money. So only time will tell. With that being said, I've talked way too long. I apologize for the mess here. I'm in the process of a big project at home, but I wanted to hit you guys with another video. Stay on the rise, everyone. Take care. Boom.
Welcome to LA where the players play, and we ride on them things